stuff, Barry. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to introduce you now to David Fitzgerald, who's the head of sustainability at Dairy Gold, and has been working in the area of food and drink for many years now. He's going to chat to us about the journey. Well, we are now the demo team. There you go.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me, and thanks to those who've stuck with it thus far. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dairy Gold, and apologies, this seems to be animating itself, so I'll work through it as best I can. So Dairy Gold are Ireland's largest farmer-owned co-op. We have about 9,000 shareholders, about 3,000 milk suppliers, and this year we'll process over 1.1 billion litres of milk. So that's roughly 20% of the milk pool in Ireland, give or take. We have about 1,150 employees and a turnover of about 850 million. In terms of the business structure, just want to, for people who are not familiar with Dairy Gold have three business units: food ingredients, an agri-business which supplies inputs to the dairy industry, and a superstore retail division as well, again, which supplies hardware and inputs to the dairy industry. And in terms of turnover, the bulk of that turnover comes from the food ingredients business, with some from the agri side. Just in terms of product mix, Dairy Gold is very much an export-driven business. I'd like to also point out that Dairy Gold doesn't actually make Dairy Gold spread. It's not our product, which is a common misconception. So this is the product portfolio. So it's a mix of cheese, specialty cheeses, whey concentrates, inputs to the infant milk formula business, and geographically we sell to all over the world. In terms of the context of dairy industry and where dairy is growing, and this is very relevant for sustainability. Globally, obviously we're aware populations are growing, people are moving to urban areas, middle class is emerging and growing all the time, and the diets, particularly in Asia, are becoming more westernized. And all of that is leading to a 2% demand in dairy, for dairy products annually. Now, the current climate, there's a bit of a dip in terms of that demand, but the longer term demand is 2% a year. In terms of what that means for Dairy Gold in terms of our forecasts, so Dairy Gold in 2014 processed about 975 million litres of milk. That is, this year will go to 1.15 billion, which is an increase of 18%, which is a very significant increase. And what's driven that is the quotas and the abolition of the quotas in April of this year. Between now and the end of 2020, or give or take, we expect that to go up by about 556 million litres, so 50 to 60% volume growth. So that's obviously very, very significant. And that sort of sets the context of sustainability. And when you talk about COP21 and agriculture and the emissions in Ireland, dairy is a big contributor there, and dairy growth is a challenge, and I think that was mentioned by the Minister early on today as well. So in terms of Dairy Gold, what are we doing on sustainability? So Dairy Gold, if we go back, in 1986 was one of the first dairies to convert to natural gas. We adopted CHP in 92. We've gotten into research with Teagasc and knowledge transfer in terms of on-farm sustainability, achieved what was the precursor to 50,001, and we now have 50,001 since 2012, and we've invested in anaerobic digestion, which I think was mentioned earlier by Pádraig Brennan as well. And there's ongoing investment in the business to increase capacity and also then to increase the sustainability of our business. So in terms of our supply chain, what does that mean? It means investment in powder, efficiency in processing. Sorry, this seems to be jumping ahead on me. Apologies for this. So we've invested in efficiency in terms of our processing plant. We have 6% of our emissions coming from biogas from our anaerobic digester. In terms of water, we have improved efficiency of our trees process by 20%. We've been working on transport, and actually shout out to Conor here on that, who's been supporting us on that. We've had a 6% fuel efficiency improvement in milk transport, and obviously investing in our plants in Mitchelstown and in Mallow as well. I think the big area where we're focused is on farm level sustainability. And on the farm, obviously the big contributor, particularly to our emissions, comes from the farm level. So 70 to 80% of emissions comes from farm level. And that's a real challenge for the dairy industry. And dairy expansion is obviously a concern there. So we're a cooperative, family-owned farms, and we work very closely with those farms. We're members of the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme, which we've been rolling out to our suppliers. Pádraig Brennan mentioned this earlier on today as well. That scheme is focused on traceability, quality, sustainability. We've got 89% of our suppliers in that at the moment. Apologies again there. And obviously dairy production in Ireland is the most efficient in Europe, along with Austria, in terms of the grass-based system that we use. On the agri side, we invested with Teagasc, as I mentioned. We've invested €1 million over 3 years on a sustainability programme, working with our farmers on economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, how they can become more efficient in terms of their production and the inputs that they use. And we're also involved in dairy genetics, improving the genetics of the animal to make it more efficient in terms of milk production, in terms of converting grass and feed into actual output as well. So a lot of focus on farm level and on the sustainability and the efficiency of animals at farm level, and I think that's where a lot of focus is going to continue into the future. In terms of, I suppose, the other element of sustainability where we're very much focused is on the community and the people side. So in terms of community, one of the things we did, and some of you may see this, particularly if you're in Munster area, is the pink silage bale wrap, Rapid Pink, in aid of the Irish Cancer Society. Very visible, very pink. We have obviously do a lot of fundraising. We work with our staff in terms of development as well, and developing the sustainability culture of our staff within the business. So what does that mean in terms of sustainability? I think that's what we're currently doing. I think we're going to have to up our game. We're going to have to move forward in terms of sustainability, and I think COP21 is setting the context. The European targets around reducing emissions at processing level, at farm level, is very, very, very relevant at the moment. So in terms of our current plans, our current plan runs to 2016 in terms of water, energy, carbon emissions reduction. But where are we going? I think we're going to have to look at commitments beyond 2016, 2020, 2025 in line with government targets as well. Carbon, water, waste to landfill, but as I mentioned before, particularly at farm level, that engagement with the farmers, the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme, using the Carbon Navigator, which Pádraig Brennan talked about earlier on today, and the Carbon Navigator is around measuring carbon footprint at farm level and transferring that into actual actionable improvements that will deliver profitability for the farmer and carbon emissions reduction. So I think, a lot of work has been done, a lot more work to do. And we'll see what comes from COP21 over the next, and hopefully, emissions reduction targets which are reasonable, challenging but reasonable for Ireland in terms of agriculture would be our hope on that front. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, David. So, just one final chance for questions. Okay, I have a couple of quick ones. Just for IBM, for Robin, who should apply? You were looking for recruits. Who should apply? Farmers or?
Yes.
Right. Fair enough. Okay.
All of the above. I think what's interesting about the whole food system is just how incredibly complex it is versus other industries. We were talking over lunch about the number of hands that food touches. From all the way from the farmer and the input companies up to what we eat. So it's incredibly complex, and I think we need to work together on these issues. So to your question, all of the above.
Fair enough. That's great. So you're open to all. Very good. And just in terms of Barry, the water, you seem to have pretty much taken a very structured approach to water management. But can you see that? How do you see that rolling out across the rest of the group? Right, because you spoke specifically about care, you got a lot of awards for it, so how is it working in terms of dissemination?
Yeah, well I guess the next step is we've 5 other sites in Ireland, 5 other beef processing sites, and the hope is to roll it out there in the next medium term, probably within the next 6 months. We're in discussions with a few organisations of how we're going to develop that on, and we'd be looking to do that relatively quickly. I mean, some of the other companies that have achieved the standards, some very large global organisations, I'm not going to mention them, but you know, big players in food and drink and indeed in other industries, they've utilised this European standard on a global scale. So, you know, they've even realised the importance and the potential of it. It's obviously relatively new. We're the first food processor in Europe to achieve this, and the plan now would be to go on 5 our sites and then look at the other sites that we have in the UK and push it on from there.
Very good, great. And David, just to try and bring the sort of the family farm and all the things about technology and resource management we've heard together, how are your members, the owners, the farmers and the family farms now reacting to this sort of onslaught of technology and resource management?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pádraig Brennan probably covered it as well earlier on today. I think everyone recognises sustainability is important. I think at farm level equally, there's a lot of challenges in the short term, obviously, in terms of the economics of dairy farming. But you know, Origin Green and Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme it's on the agenda. I think where there's an economic benefit, a lot of those measures make sense in terms of farming and the development of farming in Ireland. So I think farmers will move forward and adopt it. Obviously, there's challenges, and there's groups within the farming industry that are more progressive, and groups that are as there are in industry. But we work with all of our suppliers to try and move everyone forward.
Seeing progress.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well, it falls to me in the last minute or so just to try and bring things together for you. There was a lot of ground covered, starting off with the Minister and putting forward the target for Ireland Inc. of an 85% growth in food exports. So I think that sets the bar for everyone, and for the for the Origin Green ambassadors and others who joined us today. I think it was great to see that they've got a wide open career ahead of them. There was a huge amount covered. The main themes that have recurred through the Future in Food events over the last number of years has really been people and management. But I think today what we've seen increasingly prominent, and it started off quite early with Foyle Farm Foods, with telemetry, the use of telemetry to manage things better from Caller, again more telemetry so that they can manage the supply, and also new fuels in the form of biopropane. And then working through how some of the companies are managing risk, managing investments, etc. So there has been a huge amount pulled together, and then to have IBM come in towards the end of the afternoon and show us effectively just how big this is going to get. I think it's going to be quite a challenge and quite an interesting one. But I think the recurring themes remain people and management, and that's where an awful lot of the savings seem to be coming from. So with that, I'll try and bring matters to a close, just nearly on time. And I'd like to just ask you all to thank our speakers today, and also the team at Future in Food for looking after you all. Thank you very much. Cheers. I look forward to seeing you at the next one.